The smell of charcoal smoke clung to the summer air, mixing with the faint scent of grilled meat and sweat. It was supposed to be a celebration, a family barbecue, one of those easy gatherings where everyone laughs over shared memories and the sun slides lazily toward the horizon. But that afternoon, something cracked beneath the surface, something sharp and ugly that no one wanted to acknowledge. I arrived late, hoping to slip in quietly, maybe avoid the usual teasing Max delighted in. But as soon as I stepped onto the worn wooden deck, I felt the weight of eyes like 1,000 tiny needles. Max, my older brother by 4 years and always the loudest in the room, was already holding court. His booming laughter echoed off the walls, carrying with it the unmistakable sting of cruelty. I heard him before I saw him. "Look who decided to show up," he said, voice dripping with mock surprise. The legend himself, the world's slowest failure. The crowd chuckled, the kind of laughter that's less about joy and more about waiting for the next blow. I forced a smile, trying to ignore the tightness in my chest. Max didn't just tease me, he attacked the very parts of me I was most insecure about. My modest job, the simple apartment I'd struggled to keep, the friends I had who never quite fit the family mold. He held up a slightly charred burger, waving it like a trophy. "Here, maybe this is more your speed." Burnt and forgotten, the laughter grew louder. My cheeks flushed, and I wanted nothing more than to disappear into the grass beneath my feet. Then Lena, my sister, joined in with that cold smirk I'd come to dread. She clapped once, slow and deliberate, as if applauding a terrible show. Later, when most of the guests had wandered off to other conversations or the kids had retreated to the pool, she pulled me aside. Her voice dropped to a whisper, but the words cut deeper than any public insult. "You'd be better off not showing up sometimes," she said, eyes flicking toward the water like she was picturing something I didn't want to imagine. "Honestly, you should just..." She hesitated, then smiled that thin, practiced smile. An accident would solve so much for everyone. I swallowed hard, the world tilted, a cold rush flooding my stomach. I wanted to scream, to beg her to take it back, but no sound came out. Instead, I smiled brittle and tight because tears were weakness they could use against me. I didn't cry in front of them. I cleaned dishes after everyone left, the soap water scalding my hands, a pain I could control. Shame was a small, quiet thing, but it burned slow and steady. That night I lay awake, the words accident and failure swirling like smoke in my mind. But beneath the shame was something fiercer, a vow not to be invisible anymore. They expected me to break, to bow my head and disappear. Instead, I promised myself this: I would make them regret this. Not with anger or violence, but with the kind of quiet strength that burns brighter than any insult. After that barbecue, I didn't storm off to shout or slam doors. No, I became something quieter, something sharper. I retreated, but only to watch, to listen, to gather. While Max and Lena paraded their cruelty like medals, I collected the shards they left behind, the little moments they thought no one noticed. It started with my phone. I saved every cruel text Max sent, the ones that joked about me behind my back with his friends. "Hope he burns the burgers next time." One read, a sick echo of that afternoon. Lena's messages were worse, cold, and calculated. I found one where she whispered, "Maybe if he trips on the stairs, it'll teach him to stay out of our way." The kind of poison that creeps in slow and steady. At first, I felt ridiculous, hoarding these scraps like evidence in some invisible court. But as the collection grew, so did my resolve. It wasn't about revenge in the fiery, dramatic sense. It was about truth, about giving voice to the silences that hid beneath their laughter. Every voice note I saved, every screenshot I took, every little documented slight was a piece of a puzzle that no one else had dared to see. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I didn't seek sympathy. I let them think I was broken soft and easily dismissed. But inside, I was building walls stronger than any words they threw. I was learning to protect myself. And more than that, I was learning how to fight back without losing myself in the process. Meanwhile, I worked on myself. I enrolled in an online course I'd been too scared to start before, brushing off the voices in my head that told me I wasn't good enough. I accepted a small promotion at work, something I never dared to hope for. For the first time in years, I said no to favors that felt like chains, learning that my kindness didn't have to come with pain attached. At family gatherings, I didn't hide anymore. I showed up quietly, eyes steady, with a calm I hadn't had before. Max tried to bait me, throwing jokes like arrows, but I deflected them with a smile that was no longer brittle. Lena's smirks still stung, but I wore them like armor. The game was changing. I wasn't just the target anymore. I was a player. And all the while, my secret evidence waited patiently, like a spark in dry grass. The day it caught flame, they wouldn't know what hit them. The day Max announced his family appreciation night. I saw the perfect opening. It was classic Max, brash, loud, hungry for applause. He'd arranged the usual show, the fancy invitations, the over-the-top decorations, the endless boasting about his recent successes. Everyone would be there, all the relatives, friends, neighbors. The perfect stage for a public reckoning. But I didn't want a public fight. No shouting matches or cruel exposures. I wanted something cleaner, sharper, something that would leave no room for denial and no way to turn the tables. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about breaking them. It was about making them see themselves unmasked and uncomfortably real, in front of everyone. I baked a chocolate cake that morning, a quiet gesture designed to soften the edges and lower defenses. The kind of gesture Max would scoff at, but everyone else would appreciate. I arrived early, smiling politely, greeting cousins and aunts who hadn't known what to say since that barbecue. Some hugged me, others gave me those glances full of sympathy and quiet surprise. Max took the stage first, already drunk on attention. He told the same tired jokes, bragged about the connections and favors he'd scored, and laughed at his own punchlines, expecting us all to join in. I waited patiently. When it was my turn, I stepped up to the mic, heart steady but loud in my ears. I didn't accuse or attack. I told a story, a true story about the barbecue where I was made the joke, about the way laughter sounded when it landed on someone like me, about how cruel words hide behind jokes and smiles. I recited Lena's whispered suggestion of an accident. I played Max's voice note where he coached friends to humiliate me. The room shifted, the air thickened with silence and surprise. I didn't shout. I didn't demand apologies. I framed everything as an act of care. I'm sharing this not to tear us apart, but to bring us closer, to help us see what we've tolerated and maybe change what we let slide. Eyes widened. Aunts exchanged glances. Cousins nodded subtly. Max's face went pale, no longer the loudest in the room, but the smallest. Lena's smirk faltered, replaced by something raw. Regret, maybe guilt, or simply the discomfort of truth. Then came the unexpected. An old family friend stepped forward quietly, offering his own story of how Max's jokes had hurt others, how Lena's words cut deeper than they showed. Another cousin confessed they'd felt the tension but hadn't known how to speak up. The room was no longer Max's arena. It was a mirror reflecting the damage laughter at another's expense had done, and I was the one holding it up. The silence after my words hung heavy in the room, more powerful than any shout or accusation could have been. Max and Lena sat there, stripped of their usual armor, the laughter, the bravado, the smirks. For once, they were just two people caught in the light, no longer able to hide behind jokes or whispers. The days that followed weren't dramatic explosions of anger or regret. Instead, they were slow, careful reckonings. Max found himself losing favors he'd long taken for granted. A sponsorship he'd boasted about vanished quietly after his employer heard about the family night revelations. His charm, once his greatest weapon, felt brittle now. His reputation cracked beneath the weight of truth. Lena was different. She retreated at first, avoiding the family gatherings she once dominated with sarcasm and cold smiles. But then something shifted. Our aunt, the one who had quietly stood by me, sat her down for a talk. What came out of it was raw and painful, a confession of fear, jealousy, and loneliness behind the cruelty. Lena began therapy, a tentative step toward understanding why she wished harm on the people closest to her. I didn't rub their faces in it. Revenge wasn't about ruin or spectacle. It was about accountability and growth. When Max finally reached out, his voice unsure but sincere, I listened. He wanted to understand what he'd done, not to excuse it, but to change. Lena's messages came slowly, first hesitant apologies, then open conversations about boundaries and respect. I set limits clear, firm, but I forgave. Not because I forgot, but because I chose to step out of the shadow of pain they cast. The family began to heal, awkwardly but genuinely. Conversations became harder but more honest. Old wounds started to close, not because they were erased, but because they were finally faced. In me, I walked away from it all stronger, steadier. The backyard grill still stands, sometimes quiet, sometimes filled with laughter, different now. Softer, kinder. Revenge had promised fire, but what it delivered was light. A light that showed me my own worth and taught them that cruelty, no matter how well disguised, eventually comes to light. And that truth, served with patience and care, is the sweetest revenge of all.